Welcome to Podcast Like It's the 1990s, the podcast where we talk about the films of the 90s running through the snow-covered streets of London in tiger print underwear here in 2025. I'm your host, Phil Liskov, and with me today to continue my Patreon miniseries on the rom-coms of Renee Zellweger, our actors Tom Mice and Katie McGrath. Thank you so much for being here, guys.
Is that what you're doing? Rom-coms of Renee Zellweger?
It's a very brief
I wonder
miniseries.
why you had picked.
So it's February, and as you know, Tom, that's the month of love. Or so they say. Tom's face like he was gut punched at the mere implication of romance.
He hates love.
I basically, so I actually kind of fucked up, just to be right out of the gate here. This was so this is a Patreon about the films of the 90s. And my brain being mush because the world's a dumpster fire. I was like, oh yeah, Bridget Jones's Diary and Down with Love are both from the 2000s. And my brain just didn't put two and two together. So whatever.
I was absolutely convinced that this was from the 90s.
I was too. And even oddly, Down with Love.
It's like 99, is it not?
It's 2001.
Oh.
So to our listeners, my apologies. Whatever, who cares?
You know what? It was probably filmed in 1999, so you're fine.
Yeah, right?
You're fine.
Sure. Yeah. Down with Love, less so. That's just a fuck up on my part, which is the third movie in this miniseries. But yes, I basically part of it's a bridge too, because the previous miniseries I did was Tom Cruise. So the first film I did in this was Jerry Maguire, so it kind of bridged over to Renee, and here we are. But yes, I also desperately want to talk with you guys about Bridget Jones's Diary is ultimately what it comes down to. A movie that
the ones you thought of.
I mean, you were the ones I thought of. I mean, obviously I love talking with you guys, but also just I wanted something that was the opposite of Disclosure.
Thank you.
something that was enjoyable, and from sort of your neck of the woods. I know, obviously, Katie, you're Irish, but still, UK, what have you.
It's so weird though, because of the Oscars and substance and everything with Demi Moore. I've been thinking a lot about Demi Moore and Disclosure, and all of that in the light of what's happening. So it's stayed with me. The first episode has stayed with me, and that movie.
That was always my intent. My goal was to make
never
Demi
leave me now.
It's to make Disclosure stay with you as long as is humanly possible. I mean, God bless Demi Moore. I hope she wins the Oscar. The substance is wonderful. I hope she gives a shout out to Disclosure in her Oscar acceptance speech. Fingers crossed. But I am curious, obviously, about you guys in rom-coms. Are you fans? Because Tom, I don't think of you necessarily as a rom-com guy, but I could be proven wrong. Are you?
No.
Shocking.
Not especially. Listen, I think there are a lot of romantic comedy. This is my point. There are a lot of romantic comedies that I really, really enjoy. But you ask me if I like it as a genre.
Right.
And I'll be a real asshole and to say, no, of course I don't. But actually thinking through it, there are loads that I love.
Sure.
But I refuse to accept that I'm a rom-com fan.
Person.
But I think there are many different types of rom-coms. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it's a dead genre right now, it feels like. We're in a bit of because I think that, and this is one of, I don't want to say one of the last big ones, but it kind of is, in the sense of a beloved piece of IP in terms of this book. We'll talk about the book as well. But like that got a lot of people into the theaters, right? And we don't like, I've talked about this with Emily on the main feed. We've talked about like Emily Henry, who's this sort of very big rom-com book author right now, and how Emily is convinced that someone will crack that code and get those to theaters, and that could get people back into seats again for rom-coms. It's tough because streaming has kind of taken that baton, and they suck. So
well that's it. There still are rom-coms, but you've got an entire Hallmark channel and all these Netflix ones that they're doing, so they still are being made, but they're not.
You know what, it's very much like panto. It's like pantomime.
Oh sure.
Nobody wants to admit that they love pantomime because it's done badly so often, and you think you can get some.
That's the point of panto.
Shut up, Katie.
Sorry for making, sense of your argument.
Absolutely, it's not.
Wait, pantomime, is that like mimes? Is that what we're saying?
No, pantomime.
Oh, because Americans
Of
don't have
course,
pantomime.
this is a wasted analogy.
Sorry.
So pantomime is traditionally a Christmas theatre experience.
Okay.
And it's usually you have Aladdin, Cinderella, Jack and the Beanstalk,
Okay.
and you have the lead boy is always played by a woman, and
Okay.
there's always a dame. So usually the lead boy's mum, and that's always played by a man. Then you have like a
This
comedy
is so
double act.
English, by the way. This
What
is
the
like
fuck
the
is
most
this?
English thing
I
ever.
truly have no idea what the fuck you're talking
Now, pantomime done properly is
Yeah.
the best thing you can experience in the theatre,
Oh, it's
hands down.
wonderful.
Absolutely,
Okay.
because it's funny and there are songs and everything's bright and everything's jolly and the jokes can be great. And it's like
Okay.
farce. It's like harking back to farce and to vaudeville. And it's probably the interaction with the audience. There's lots of, he's behind you, and the audience says, shout out, oh, no, he isn't. Oh, yes, he is.
Oh,
And it
so it's
harks
like a
back.
dinner theater thing?
No,
Phil.
no.
Dinner theatre. Just no.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
I'll
explain
just
it.
go. I'll go.
I'm
You guys can talk
explaining it,
about
and at
bridge
no
jokes.
point did I mention dinner.
Well, I mean, if there's fucking audience interaction, that's like
It's
dinner
audience
theater.
interaction, and I think it's the closest thing we have to how theatre was in Shakespeare's day.
For sure. But when I say it's supposed to be bad, I mean it's not supposed to. You don't sit there and
It's tongue in cheek. No, it's
yeah,
not.
it's
Okay.
fun. It's supposed to
Yes.
be,
It's campy.
yes.
Oh, come on. It's not like watching Ibsen. The reason the National Theatre in London had never done a panto was because they were worried about the arguments between the actors. Everyone would want to play the Dame. Everyone. And I've seen Ian McKellen play the Dame,
I was about to say Ian McKellen did it.
and he was absolutely brilliant.
It sounds amazing, and I would gladly watch pantomime. I'm surprised it hasn't made the leap over the pond.
Come over one Christmas.
I would.
Yeah.
and
It's a Christmas thing.
Do you
And it's
think
great.
that? But I also feel like this does speak to rom-coms in the sense that I do feel like a lot of romantic comedies have Christmas as a sort of a hallmark of it in a lot of ways, right? And that is sort of part of this. And I think to your point too, Tom, like they tend to be a little tongue-in-cheek, right? Like they tend to be a little bit self-aware.
Well, my point of comparing it to
Yeah.
pantomime was that everyone assumes that pantomime is shit, and also everyone I think assumes rom-coms are shit. But when you see them done well, it can be the most brilliant, joyful experience you can have watching a film or being in the theatre. It can be amazing.
I
But I think there have just been too many bad ones, and I think you're right to say that at the moment there's a lot of just very cheap, very knock them out quick streamer.
because they generally have a low overhead, right? Like romantic comedies. When I mean, I'm older than both you guys, but when we were growing up, you had movie stars, right? So you were paying for movie stars, which was the major sort of budgetary thing you were dealing with rom-coms. Most of it's just, relatively cheap. It's not like there's special effects. It's not as though you could do them for a reasonable budget and they would make a good amount on the other side of it. But now what you have are a lack of, and forgive me, but movie stars. I know obviously you're both actors and what have you, but like movie stars the actors aren't the draw they used to be, I guess is what I would say to a lot of people. They're not the IP that they used to be. And I think that has made romantic comedies even harder to make for theatrical experience. So you're just seeing a lot of, which is why I think that the IP thing, the book thing is the key. It's can we sort of find a way to get people to get beloved books like this one, which was part of the draw. I mean, this movie, by the way, had a $25 million budget, which is like kind of nothing. It makes 334 worldwide. So like,
Is it really?
I mean, just
Well, no wonder they've made 4 of them.
correct. One on streaming as we speak. But yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How much of the draw do you think actually was on? Because back then people did watch actors, and you did have movie stars. And Renee Zellweger was big. Hugh was still riding a very high wave and playing, and both of them playing against type. More on what against type means for Renee Zellweger later.
Yes.
Colin was still very much in his Darcy phase and leaning into it with
Mhm.
Tom firmly in cheek.
Renee Zellweger, was this
So
after her first Oscar or
this is her
before?
first Academy Award nomination.
So right, so she hadn't done Cold Mountain at this point. So was she really
No.
that big a draw?
So just on the Renee Zellweger of it all, obviously Jerry Maguire is the thing that puts her on the map. It's this enormous movie. And I would say that she kind of doesn't totally know. I mean, I don't want to say she, but like her reps, whatever, don't totally know how to follow it up in the sense that how big a name is she? She's got two movies that come out in 98 that I think were shot prior to Jerry Maguire because they don't really exist. And then her first real follow up is One True Thing, this weepy with Meryl Streep and William Hurt, where it's like just, sad family, Oscar-y kind of thing. Then she's in a straight up terrible fucking movie from 99 called The Bachelor with Chris O'Donnell, which is, speaking of bad rom-coms, it's like one of the worst. And then she's in Me, Myself, and Irene with Jim Carrey, where they meet and they date for a few years, which is its own thing. Then she's in Nurse Betty, which is the Neil LaBute movie
that she got the Golden Globe for.
Right, which she's quite good in, but it's a weird ass movie. And then it's this, and then White Oleander, and then Chicago in 2002, Down with Love, and Cold Mountain in 03. So like it takes a beat for her to kind of find her footing. And then, I mean, there's an argument to be made for she kind of like sort of disappears for a while and reemerges and wins an Oscar for a movie that I guarantee you no one has seen, which is Judy. But anyway,
I've seen it.
All right, so you're the one, Katie.
Oh,
yeah. I resent her winning an Academy Award for that movie because I feel like Saoirse Ronan should have won for Little Women. That's the bee in my bonnet.
I love Little Women.
I fucking love that movie. I'm not alone either, Tom. Don't make it seem as though this is my thing.
I'm not saying that you're completely out there, but I love picturing you
watching Little Women,
under a blanket
with having some tea and just it's great. I feel like it's a prime. My issue with her winning for Judy is more of like it's my issue with the Oscars being narrative drawn as opposed to the performance, right? Which is that like Renee comes back from pseudo retirement, if you will, and gives us a good performance where she pretends to be somebody else. The Oscars fucking love a pantomime or what have you. They love that shit, and it's just kind of like, guys, what are we doing?
When was the last time the person who won the Oscar was someone you went, you know what? Yeah. I mean, Cillian Murphy in Oppenheimer for me, I thought, yeah. Sure. And actually Downey, I thought he
I mean, so last year, Katie.
This is my point. Because I used to always say, like, the bar for me for Best Actress was Le'Veon Rose, Marion Cotillard. I thought she was beautiful and wonderful in that. And if you're not on that, I'm like, then what? So Renee Zellweger, to bring it back to this, getting nominated for Bridget Jones, I was like,
right. We're going to get to that because that is
no idea she was nominated for that.
Her first Oscar nomination was for this movie. I definitely want to unpack that because that is we will have that conversation. I do think, like, I'm just looking at Best Actress over the last like 10 years or so, and listen, there's obviously some spotty wins. People that win because of a career, win because of Sandra Bullock.
Entirely against winning. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, it happens more with. I'm not against a career win per se. I just feel as though, and not to get engendered, but I do feel like it happens more with women than it does with men, which is that they're put through the paces more than I feel like men are a lot of the time. And I think that, like, when you look at Julianne Moore, Kate Winslet, these are two people that gave us a staggering amount of performances that are just unbelievable. And what did they win for? Still Alice and The Reader, two movies that like straight up don't exist, that is just like, we have to give it to them because it's been a million wonderful performances, and what are we doing?
Yes, but they never gave one to Peter O'Toole.
Sure.
Or
Okay.
Jenna Rowlands, if we're talking about
Or Cassavetes. I mean, like, yeah, there's many fucking Stanley Kubrick. There's many people that do not have Oscars that should have
I'm
Oscars.
okay with Stanley Kubrick. I'm not a fan.
Wow.
Oh,
Shit.
what?
Hot takes from Katie McGrath.
Yeah.
Damn.
you know what? I was considering
Although
earlier.
I do love Barry Lyndon. I give you that. I love Barry Lyndon, but
Of course you do.
I mean,
You
filmed in my hometown.
But then I'm looking at like Natalie Portman for Black Swan, or
Oh, God, I hated that.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
You're full of hot takes today. This is great. I mean, I think that Frances McDormand's a tremendous actor. One of my favorites. That she has 3 Academy Awards is great. 2 of them are for performances that I think are fine. I mean, I think 3 Billboards is like straight up not a good movie.
Right.
I just don't like that movie, and I think that Nomadland is a good movie, but 2020 was obviously a weird year. So like,
Was it? Why?
Yeah, I know.
Why?
Weird things happen.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But then like Olivia Colman for The Favorite. I mean, like, great, an amazing win and an amazing movie. Michelle Yeoh for Everything Everywhere. I think she's great in that movie. So, it's a weird mixed bag. But to get to the Renee of it all, in 2001, she gets a nomination for this. The other people she's nominated against are she loses to Halle Berry in Monsters Ball, Judi Dench for Iris, Nicole Kidman for Moulin Rouge, Sissy Spacek for In the Bedroom, and Renee Zellweger for Bridget Jones.
I'm okay with Renee Zellweger being in that list.
Sure. Here's my question to both of you. You're both actors.
Apparently.
What are our thoughts on her accent?
Great.
Okay.
Great. Great. As that type of, West London posh girl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so
she sounds like a female version of Tom, doesn't she?
Wow, shots fired.
Look,
Katie's feisty today.
I'm sorry I got aggressive about pantomime earlier. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. I'm tired. Just playing. Please.
That was, I mean, so to your point, Tom, Sight and Sound said that her accent was, quote unquote, just a little too studied posh, which I think is interesting. I think it's fine. But when I press play on this movie, which this is the first time I've watched this film since 01, so this is not, this is kind of just it was a little bit of a hurdle for me up top. Up top, I was like, I got used to it about like 10 minutes in, but in the beginning, I was like.
But I remember when this movie came out, because I'm old enough to remember when this movie came out. And all I remember, I remember a lot of things about it, which I will go into. But one of the things was everybody talked about how amazing her accent was.
Yeah.
Like it was one of the things that it was like pitch perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trained a lot. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Something to make us feel very old is if you're playing a character from the 90s, the accent is now going to be a period accent. And so you hear people with the accent that she's using now. She couldn't do, I don't know what she's doing in the new one. I haven't seen it yet. But it can't be the same as it was.
That's very true.
Interesting. Yeah.
You don't use that accent anymore outside of period pieces.
All the time.
Huh. So the people she beat out for this role, just so for what it's worth, the role was originally offered to Toni Collette. She was their first choice, who turned it down because she was busy on Broadway. She was in a show called The Wild Party at the time. Everyone talked about, myself included, Kate Winslet at the time, but she was 24, so she really was too young for this role. So it does sort of make sense that she was not really in the conversation. Helena Bonham Carter, Kate Blanchett, Emily Watson, Rachel Weisz, Cameron Diaz.
Diaz.
I don't know what Cameron Diaz would have been like in this film. That feels very just like it's the late 90s and Cameron Diaz is a big deal, so we're going to consider this. But I don't say that with any malice towards Cameron Diaz. I think she's great, but I think that would have been weird. Helena Bonham Carter, that's just a lot. Helena Bonham Carter brings so much of her just Helena Bonham Carter-ness. I do too.
This would have been before she became the Helena Bonham Carter we now know and love. She was
Yes.
Oh, I
Yes.
always love her. I think she's amazing.
before. When was Fight Club?
That's 99. So like this is
Oh shit. Oh, then I take it back. She's.
Imagine going from Marla Singer to Bridget Jones.
I mean, would watch, but would be crazy.
But would be amazing.
I mean, but to your point, Tom, she's done all the Merchant Ivory shit, right? So like, it would have been interesting. Kate Blanchett, I think, also would have probably been too young at this point. Emily Watson, I could see it, but like, she's just not effervescent in the same way.
Rachel Weisz doing it and being great.
Sorry? Rachel Weisz, yeah, who apparently was turned down because of quote unquote she's too beautiful, is what they said. Which I'm like, what are you saying about these other people?
Guys. Like, I don't have a career.
You get that note a lot, Katie. You're just too pretty. It's just like, yeah, it's tough. I mean, listen, it's a burden. What are you gonna do?
We all know, guys.
Yeah. But I do think that, a lot of, and I'm sure what you remember, Katie, because I remember this too, and I'm sure you do as well, Tom, like the big to do was that they went with an American and everyone was very sort of, the Brits were understandably upset about it. This sort of, the book comes out in 96. I remember, I've read the book too. I read it. So I think we've talked about this, Tom, if I'm not mistaken, but, so I did my final English class for high school at Oxford University in the summer of 98.
Oh my God.
Which sounds much more posh than it is.
No,
it was just like, it was, but yeah. So in 98, the summer of 98, I am in England and this book is everywhere. And it's this huge thing. It was that and High Fidelity. I remember those two books around the same time being like, Bridget Jones is for girls, High Fidelity is for boys.
And then High Fidelity went fully American with the film.
Fully American.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was outrage. But it was a great film.
But it's a great film. And I really love the show too. I actually kind of love the show more than the movie. I know that's a crazy thing to say, but yeah, it's a really good show. If you haven't watched it, highly recommend. But I remember reading the book of Bridget Jones and feeling very sort of like, I get why this is a hit. I get why everybody loves this. It was very sort of playful and like kind of naughty in its own way and all that sort of stuff. But very British. And I felt like I understood people being kind of up in arms about them casting American.
Well, it's also, it must have been the 80s, there was a book called The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole.
Oh my God, I love that. I've read all of them. All of them.
Are you familiar with them?
I do know them. Yep.
And so the idea of, comedy diary books, I mean, all the way back to, Peeps and Tristram Shandy and all the rest of it. We love a comedy diary.
What's not to love?
No, exactly. And so Adrian Mole, what was the name of the girl that he was in love with? Pandora. No.
Pandora Braithwaite.
Pandora Braithwaite, that's right.
Really love this book, guys.
What a name. That's an incredible name.
Yeah. They're very good books. Would have been Bridget Jones's age at the time that
Sure.
came down. So I do remember saying it seems like a natural progression from there, which made people take it to their hearts even more. So I can understand why a few people wouldn't be happy with an American coming in.
But also, Bridget Jones is so British.
Yeah, which is,
she really is. It's not like she's nowadays characters, I guess, tend to be more transatlantic because media is very transatlantic. But and it was back then. But Bridget Jones is still very, very British and very British humor.
Which is why I say I absolutely am fine with Renee Zellweger being nommed for it because she nails it. She nails the Britishness, even accent aside. I think she does has very British sensibilities in how she does it.
I fully agree, and I would also say too that I think part of the success of this franchise, because we are 4 films deep at this point, just crazy to say. I've only seen the first one. Is that she is American, makes that movie pop in America. Now, you can say what you want about whether or not it might have ruffled feathers in the UK. They knew the Brits were showing up to see this movie, right? Like it kind of didn't matter who was in it. Getting Americans to show up for it is a hurdle in and of itself. Now, admittedly, this is 2001. We're post kind of uh, the Richard Curtis boom that's happening around this time as well. So Four Wings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, like Hugh Grant is a name in the States, as you mentioned earlier, Tom. So like there is kind of that's certainly helping. But I think if you didn't cast Renee Zellweger in this film, I think you would have had a steeper climb to get this movie to make as much money as it made in the States,
right.
for what that's worth. But I'm going to give a little bit of context for our listeners. At the start of the new year, 32-year-old Bridget, played by Renee Zellweger, obviously decides it's time to take control of her life and start keeping a diary, as everyone does. Do people still have diaries? Is that a thing?
No, we just call it journaling now.
It's true. It's true. Now, the most provocative, erotic, and hysterical book on her bedside table is the one she's writing. With a taste for adventure and an opinion on every page, from exercise to men to food to sex and everything in between, she's turning the page on a whole new life. Google, thank you for that wonderful synopsis. Bridget Jones's Diary opened on April 13th, 2001 against Spy Kids, Along Came a Spider, Joe Dirt, and Blow. So quite the time at the movies. As I mentioned, it would go on to make $334 million on a $25 million budget. It is 80% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics and 81% from audiences. Roger Ebert gave the film 3.5 stars. This review. Glory be, they didn't muck it up. Bridget Jones's Diary is a beloved book about a heroine both lovable and human, and is made against all odds into a funny and charming movie that understands the charm of the original and preserves it. The book, a fictional diary of a plump 30-year-old London office worker, don't love that word either, Katie, and he uses it several more times, was about a specific person in a specific place. When the role was cast with Renee Zellweger, who is not plump and is from Texas, there was gnashing and wailing. Obviously, the Miramax boys, who've done nothing wrong, obviously. I was
wondering when we were going to get to that.
Would turn London's pride into a Manhattanite or worse. Nothing doing. Renee Zellweger put on 20-something pounds and developed the cutest little would-be double chin, as well as a British accent that sounds reasonable enough to me. What a review, Roger. 3.5 stars out of 4.
Why? Can I ask something? Because I do think this every time. I've been on this podcast a few times now.
Yes.
You always give us Roger Ebert's review. Yep. And I have respect for people who dedicate their lives to studying film and critiquing film.
Sure.
Why is he so revered? Because he seems they're problematic, right?
I think first of all, he did win a Pulitzer. So
so actually, by winning a Pulitzer, you assume that his vocabulary would stretch beyond plump.
Plump.
I mean, rest in peace, Roger Ebert. But yes, I do think the reason that we chose, and by we I mean Kenny and I, way back in the day when we started this podcast back in 2017, we picked him because he does feel like the American.
No, and that's what I mean. I don't mean why did you choose him? I just he really has, because even before I met you, I was very familiar. He's the guy, the critic the American critic who we all know. I
think. I speaking from my own experience, I mean, obviously Siskel and Ebert were sort of these totems of criticism, right? They were they were the first guys that made the transition to television, and their reviews obviously held a lot of weight. I think that Roger Ebert was considered intellectual in the way that he kind of broke down film. But I also think he did. Listen, I'm not writing for this review. I do think part of it is
every review is something about breasts or.
The man loved boobs. He talked a lot about boobs, and like I said, an intellectual.
That makes it okay. I got it.
He likes boobs on an academic level.
Right. I mean, I remember when we did Disclosure, he talked a lot about Demi's boobs in the review. It was just so I don't know what to say outside of the fact that I think also because and I think this is Emily talks about this too. You have to review every fucking movie, right? So you're seeing a lot of fucking garbage. You get grumpy. You start to like, you're just looking for straws and trying to think, grabbing at anything you can that is interesting. For him, it's boobs. I don't know what to tell you. But plump. I
was going to say grabbing at straws, grabbing at boobs, plump. Is this where we're like?
This is the listen, Roger Ebert. God bless you. We miss you. I don't know what to say. I do think that this movie had quite a development period. Working Title got the rights to this book. I honestly think maybe the galley stage, if I'm not mistaken, or like shortly after its publication. So they were trying to get this thing made for quite some time. The thing that I find interesting, Sharon Maguire, who directs this film, gets the gig. From what I can glean, she had done some television, so it's not as though she didn't have any experience directing. She was friends with Helen Fielding, very good friends with Helen Fielding. And in fact, the character of Shasa
is based on her, yeah.
Is based on her. That's crazy to me. I understand she was a female British director, of which there sadly are still very few. So I understand that they wanted a female director for this film, as they should. It's nuts to me that they handed this beloved title to someone with a tangential, like crazy.
But then they didn't give the second movie to her, so that tells you something, doesn't it? But I think she's now done. I think she's now done. Did she do 3 and 4, or did she do
4? I think she just did the third.
Yeah, you know. So says something.
Listen, I don't know what to tell you. It's a weird time, 2001, for female British directors.
When is it not a weird time?
Well, I don't know. The 90s, were the 90s a better time? I really don't know what to tell you. They were weird for other people too. It wasn't great. As we mentioned, Renee Zellweger puts on 25 pounds. She works at a British publishing company for a month. She uses an alias. She puts on this accent. She apparently was not recognized, which I guess is not much of a surprise. She wasn't the biggest movie star in the world. And like the UK and a publishing firm, like I don't know what she was expecting.
I'm going to start saying that whenever I do a job, you say, and you know, I just got so into it that I'd go to the shops and no one recognized me.
I was so in character.
So in it.
Yeah. I mean, just fucking Daniel Day-Lewis that shit. No one will recognize you. I love that she also kept a framed picture of her then boyfriend Jim Carrey on her desk, and her coworkers found it odd but never mentioned it, which I think is amazing.
Just really, really into the mask, guys. Ace Ventura does it for her.
Just fucking love the mask so much. Renee Zellweger's love life is a little odd. I don't like in terms of the people that she dated.
Didn't she marry a country music star?
She did. I don't know if she's still with him.
No, that was her first
husband.
Yeah.
I nearly asked who, but I don't think I'd know if you told me. I don't think I know any country music stars, do I?
Let me see if I can find that.
Just like I remember reading about it and I'm like, how did they meet?
Well, so it's very interesting. She's from Texas, so she's probably into that sort of stuff.
Because everyone from Texas wears a cowboy hat. And
she was married to Kenny Chesney.
That's who it is.
She was married to him.
Kenny Chesney?
Yes. Do you know him?
No, but if I was going to have a career in country music, I'd change my name to Kenny Chesney.
Yeah.
That's a good name.
What you do. She dated Bradley Cooper. She dated Jim Carrey. And she dated Jack White while they met while doing Cold Mountain. They apparently they met over their love started over a discussion of the skulls that they had found in the woods. So take from that what you would like. She seems interesting. She seems like an interesting person. Yeah, I don't know. I do think that she has a unquestionably sort of very watchable, very charming. She is very winning. I find her as an
accessible.
Actor.
She's very accessible.
Yeah. she's so good in Jerry Maguire. She's just like it really did feel like a who is this person and what, and I can't wait
I
to.
was really surprised that you didn't mention that on the her Oscar noms list. I really, in my head, she was
Yeah,
nominated.
yeah, she wasn't. Tom was Cuba Gooding obviously won, but there were no. I mean, I would argue, and I talked about this on our Jerry Maguire episode, but like, had Bonnie Hunt been given like 10 more minutes of screen time, I could see her having got a supporting actress
She was
nomination
lovely.
because she's really, really good in that
She was
movie.
lovely in it.
Um, so Colin Firth, Hugh Grant obviously play Mark Darcy and Daniel Carver in this. Um, Apparently Hugh Grant signed on once Richard Curtis did a pass on the script, which I think speaks to perhaps what the script was like previous to his pass. Yeah, I mean, Hugh Grant in this feels like a real fulcrum point,
I
right?
was going to ask that. Is this the first time that Hugh Grant plays
A dick.
kind of like, well, yeah,
Yeah.
because up until then he'd be this foppish English, Four Weddings, An Englishman Went Up the
Totally.
Hill, Sense and Sensibility. Is this the
Mhm.
moment where he plays an asshole?
It,
And he's very good at it.
he's
Great.
very good at it.
He
One
will.
might argue that it speaks to who he might be.
There's no
I
Or
don't
acting.
his
know.
actor, Phil. I think he's better at the bastard than he is at the nice guy, the foppish.
I would.
Oh, yeah, it's much more watchable.
Yeah.
He's okay. I love Notting Hill. I love Notting Hill, and he's great in it.
Mhm.
You don't like not? You guys don't like Notting Hill?
We've discussed this before, haven't we?
I
think
don't
we've
know that we have. Maybe because like it's 99, so I'm sure we talked about it at some point. I'm amazed that you guys don't. But do you think that it's because of the kind of Americanization factor? Like Four Weddings is a much more British movie, I would say. Because like Andy McDowell isn't, you know what I mean? Whereas like the Julia Roberts component to Notting Hill is significant, right? Like that is
right in it.
she is, but like it makes it very much more American. Do you think that that's what made you guys
There's
not like it?
nothing wrong with the movie. There's nothing wrong with Notting Hill. Like it's on, I'll sit down and no, I won't sit down and watch it, but if it's in the background, I'll keep it going.
Okay.
It'll
Do you know
stay
what I
on
mean?
while doing the hoovering.
Exactly. I won't sit down and like take time out of my day and actually watch it, but I'll happy to have it on in the background. Like
Okay.
there's nothing wrong with it,
Okay.
but it's not like
I know what you're saying.
if somebody was like, you can never watch Notting Hill again, I'd be like, fine.
Wow. Okay. That's harsh, but okay, that's fair. I mean, I do really love it. But yes, Tom, sorry.
I'm with Katie on that. But I think that goes for all Richard Curtis films for me. I'm not a great
Yeah, I don't
fan
love.
of his London.
You don't love his London.
I don't love his London.
Do you?
Why not?
Yeah.
I think even back then I was aware of how white male it was. White posh male.
Sure.
Even in the 90s I was aware of that. And even more so now. And I thought it was a kind of fairy tale London that not that it didn't exist, I'm quite pleased it didn't exist. And a type of English stereotype that I'm not a huge fan of. And yet he gets the most incredible casts and they sell it brilliantly. Much like this film, I think the cast is so incredible that it
Here's a Richard Curtis film that I'm
this film
convinced
is
you
very
like, though.
courtesy.
This is very Richard Curtisy. I am going to go out on a limb and suggest that you really love the Mr. Bean movie that Richard Curtis was a writer on.
Have I seen it?
movie.
You've never seen the Mr. Bean movie? Neither of you?
I didn't know Richard Curtis wrote that, did he?
Yeah, he wrote it.
I take it back. I'm a huge Richard.
Yeah, I was just going to say. I was like, so for our listeners, Richard Curtis, Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, this film, Love Actually. Obviously. About Time is the other one. Yesterday, the where the Beatles don't exist movie. He did an uncredited rewrite on Ticket to Paradise. Sure. He's got
I don't know anything about it.
The George Clooney, Julia Roberts rom-com that came out a few years ago, where they're parents to this.
Oh no, I did see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, no. And then he's got, yeah, I guess a movie called That Christmas, some animated film that he, I don't know, wrote.
Oh, that was this last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Listen, Richard Curtis, he's a cottage industry unto himself, for good or bad. He also, for what it's worth, is an EP on Mr. Bean's Holiday. So take that. Also, he's going to get that Mr. Bean money whenever he can.
Great film.
Never seen. I do love Four Weddings, I have to say.
It's a good movie.
I like Four Weddings.
Yeah. But I think we know the TV show's better, though.
Thank you. oh God. I'm going to go to the minibar and.
On the Hugh Grant, though, to your initial question, Katie, about like this being a fulcrum point for him, I think it is. He tries to do some like, he's in a movie called Extreme Measures, which is super weird, which is like this, it's like this dark medical drama with him and Gene Hackman, where like doctors are doing like terrible procedures on people, which came out in '96.
Really?
Gene Hackman and Hugh Grant did a movie, and I have not seen it.
Extreme Measures came out in 1996. What a cast! Hugh Grant, Gene Hackman, Sarah Jessica Parker. I mean,
I'm in.
I think we might need to do an episode on Extreme Measures, just a bonus, guys, just to talk about that fucking weird ass movie. He does that. Then he does the unfortunate Mickey Blue Eyes, which is one of the worst comedies of 1999. But then he's in Notting Hill. Then he's in, he has a bit part in Woody Allen's Small Time Crooks in 2000, a movie no one needs to watch, obviously. Then he's in this, and I think that, to your point, this, then 2 Weeks Notice, then About a Boy, feel like he's like, oh, I have another gear, and it's I'm an asshole.
And it's so good.
It's a really good gear that everybody seems to love.
Great gear. I should live here. I should break the speed limit in this gear.
You know, he plays the prime minister in Love Actually. You know, he dances. Everyone loves it. He voiced himself on his secretary. I don't know. You know, then he's in Music and Lyrics, where he plays kind of the same thing. He plays a dick. He's great in Cloud Atlas, where he plays a myriad of very inappropriate and problematic roles, but he's great in it. And then he kind of goes away for a bit, and now he's sort of in his supporting character.
Asshole part?
Yeah. I mean, he should have got an Oscar nomination for Paddington 2 because he's incredible in it.
Everyone says that. I haven't seen Paddington 2, but like my brother is like, it's the
it.
best movie ever, and Hugh Grant is unbelievable.
You have no idea how good it is, Katie.
Everything about it is delightful.
Yeah.
Really? Do I need to have seen Paddington 1?
No. You know, it's a bear who likes marmalade, right?
Of course I know who Paddington is. He's
You're
from
good.
Peru, and he keeps the sandwiches in his hat.
You're good. You're fine. Yeah, just watch.
Right, so,
although I will.
The
first one is quite good, and Nicole Kidman, by the way, as the villain, goes for it, and God bless her for it. She really is, but it's lesser than the second one for sure, but it's still quite good.
Sorry.
Do you think that? All right, you say Hugh Grant is amazing in Paddington Bear 2.
Correct.
Do you think that the Oscars were just like, no way, it's Paddington Bear 2. We can't even look at it.
Fucking consider it. There's no question in my mind that they didn't did not even think for a second.
But
I could be wrong.
I think it's deserving of.
I genuinely believe that he should have got an Oscar nomination for it. In 2017, I'm just looking up Best Supporting Actor. I'm just curious who got it. It was, I mean, understandably, it went to Mahershala Ali for Moonlight, which is great, and he should have won.
Yeah, that was a good one.
The person that I would have taken, the five people: Jeff Bridges for Hell or High Water. He's good. That movie's fine. Lucas Hedges in Manchester by the Sea, a very good movie. He's very good in it. Dev Patel in Lion. That movie's fine, and I would whatever. And Michael Shannon in Nocturnal Animals. That movie sucks, and I hate it. So there are people that I would have pulled out of there for.
You wouldn't think that like Paddington Bear 2 Hugh Grant fits in with this?
I think it would have been great.
I'd love to
We
have
just,
seen that.
Manchester by the Sea, Paddington Bear 2.
but like we contain multitudes, Katie, and the Oscars should do that.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I think that, a good performance is a good performance no matter what it's in, and they should all be looked at. I completely agree with you, but I just think it's interesting to discuss the fact that because it is Paddington Bear 2, nobody is going to take it seriously as a good performance, even though from the sounds of it, it's an amazing performance.
It's wonderful.
I think this speaks to Hugh's entire career, is that
Yes.
I don't think anyone realizes quite how good he is and how difficult it is to do what he
I agree.
does. And I think he's completely masterful at it. And
Well, I
everything.
think he's in a film this year called Heretic, which is okay, but he's great in it.
Glasses, he's wearing like
He wears glasses.
no,
He does an amazing Jar Jar Binks impression halfway through the film that is
on purpose.
something. On purpose. But what's amazing is that it's clear that Hugh Grant has never seen Star Wars Episode 1. Like, he's never seen Jar Jar Binks. He's just like, they tell him to, it's phenomenal. He's great in it, and he plays this very evil character, and he's great. I think to your point, Tom, like, he's gotten to this place in his career now where it's kind of the fuck it. I'm going to do things.
It does seem as though everything he does now, you can see him say to the audience, look at what I'm doing now. Look, yes. I'm Hugh Grant and I'm doing this. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? I'm in Oompa Loompa. Fuck. I'm in Paddington. Fuck.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Dungeons and Dragons, he couldn't even contain it.
Everyone's having so much fun in that movie.
Dungeons and fucking Dragons.
Have you seen Dungeons and Dragons, Katie?
Yes, I have.
That movie's great.
I love a movie like that. Well, I agree with you, is like everybody's like, it's Dungeons and Dragons, and they just have 3 months of like hell fun.
Yeah.
Because they're not
having a blast.
Yeah, because they're not trying to do anything serious. And then you get a very different type of performance because there's no weight on the performance. And then you enjoy watching it. Like, those are the kind of jobs I love doing. Not that I've ever done anything other than that, but
Have you done comedies, Katie?
No, I'm not funny.
I disagree. You're hilarious. We've been laughing the whole fucking time. What are we talking about?
My very first job, an actor said to me, I made a joke, and he looked at me and he said, Katie, don't try. You're not funny. Oh, and I've never lost it.
First of all, that's a fucked up thing to say to someone early in their career, because clearly you're still struggling. Like, it stayed with you.
I've never got beyond it, guys.
That's fucked up.
I remember it very briefly. So now I know I have the idea of comedy terrifies me, and I have no comic timing. To be fair, he was not wrong, but it still hurt. But honestly, no.
I mean, listen,
it's such a skill. I am so in awe of people. Tom is very funny.
Tom is funny.
Tom Myson,
but he knows it.
Yeah, but he's got other flaws, so you make you feel better. But he is very funny. You are. You're funny.
You're funny, Tom.
Yeah.
I'm feeling very uncomfortable in this moment.
Oh, you're so English.
Right. So let's talk Colin Firth for a second here, for what it's worth. Colin Firth is a guy who, it feels like American audiences probably first noticed him in The English Patient, where he plays
before that in
Prejudice, the TV series. Wasn't that big in the States?
Sure.
That was big in the States, wasn't it?
Yes. Yes, in the sense that, like, on video it probably did quite well. I don't know that people watched it live, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I remember
the sexual awakening of an entire generation of women as he came out in that shirt, which they still play.
Yes.
I can't say I can't speak to that. Maybe. I know that it's definitely a big part of his whole thing here. I'm just, in terms of when people watched it, how they watched it, I can't speak to it.
But don't they say that he said the reason he took the job was because the character is based on him playing Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice? So
his name is fucking Mr. Darcy in this movie. I mean, we're going to talk in a second about how much she's stealing from Pride and Prejudice, because it's like crazy.
Homage.
Okay, sure. Okay, that too. So English Patient is the first movie I think that people notice him in. He plays Kristen Scott Thomas's husband, jilted husband. Great movie. He's very good in it. kind of fucked up that the way that their characters resolve themselves isn't great. Crashing a plane with your wife in it into the man who had sex with her is kind of fucked up, but okay. Um, then he's in Shakespeare in Love, which obviously is a big movie. He's in that he's like the villain in that movie, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's in this. And I feel like this, then he's in Love Actually. He's obviously in the Bridget Jones sequel where she goes to a Thai prison. Never seen it, never read it. Don't know how that's possible.
I saw it.
Tom's face right now.
Hang on. Now, I'm sure I've seen it. I don't. She goes to a Thai prison.
And there's something like I have memories of her like teaching them how to dance or something. Yeah.
It's totally normal. Totally normal. Yeah, basically she is put in a Thai prison because it's part of her like reporting. She like goes to Thailand and there's like she has mushrooms on her and the psychedelic mushrooms get her put in this prison. Listen, guys, I don't know. It was 2003 or 99 was when the book came out. Anyway,
thank God that Mr. Darcy was a human rights lawyer, so he could get her out of the Thai prison after they broke up. And what a lovely meet cute to bring them back together, and not at all offensive to Thailand.
One of my biggest hurdles in this movie is the whole like he's a barrister. The amount of coincidence of moments where he bumps into her is insane. And then it's like, oh, you need a fucking interview with it's crazy. It's crazy. And I cannot ride for it. But that being said, I think that Colin Firth, probably Mamma Mia is another thing that everyone kind of really falls in love with him in. That's in 2008. Then obviously he wins the Oscar for The King's Speech, everyone's favorite movie that's obviously better than The Social Network. And I don't know why we would ever think for a second that fuck that movie is basically what I'm saying. I don't love The King's Speech.
Get to that point because it really seemed that's where you were going.
It's fine. I just whatever. It's like we allowed,
I was talking to a friend of mine about Fincher movies the other day, and what's amazing is they don't date.
No.
Watch them again and they still hold up 5, 10, however many years later. They don't date, which is amazing, which is such an achievement. One, to make a movie that's brilliant in the first watching, but and it's still brilliant 10 years later in this day and age is rare.
I think the only one that dates a little bit, but I actually think it adds to it, is Fight Club. Like, I think that Fight Club is the only one that has this sort of, because it was so in its moment and it was so zeitgeisty.
But I don't think it dates for that reason. I think it dates because it's zeitgeisty, not because of the movie. The movie doesn't date, but I think everything that's around it dates it. But the movie itself, if you didn't know anything and watched Fight Club, as an 18-year-old for the first time now, you'd be like, this is an amazing movie.
Absolutely. I guess what I mean is, I totally agree. I think that movie's themes and what it's that doesn't date. No. To your point, like Fincher is very specific about the things that he makes. Like, I think that The Social Network has only dated because Mark Wahlberg is a monster and we now need a sequel that talks about how he's a terrible
Mark
person.
Wahlberg is, yes, but Mark Zuckerberg.
Whatever, they're both suck. Yeah, Zuckerberg. It is the Fight Club thing is that like Tyler Durden's aesthetic, is very kind of its moment, but it's also like he's an alien of some sort too, where like it's so all that stuff just part and parcel. Anyway, King's Speech sucks. But whatever. Colin Firth won.
Have you done a series on Fincher? You should do a series on Fincher.
Oh my god, I would gladly love to do that. We'll do that someday.
Let's do it.
You want to do it? Yeah, we could do that. I mean, Tom, you're chewing on what our next miniseries is going to be. You got to figure out what we're going to do. I'm still.
Katie, thank you for the idea. We'll never see you again.
Take all the credit.
So Bridget Jones's Diary. I am sort of the thing that kind of hit me watching this, and it does tie into the high fidelity thing that we were talking about earlier, Tom, about the adapting of beloved books that have such a sort of specific voice what
Yeah.
what the adaptations tend to do is lean heavily on VO, so you can just like lift passages from it and just kind of have the character's voice literally inside people's heads. I think they do that a little bit too much in this. It's fine. In High Fidelity, they turn it into fourth wall breaking, where he's literally like talking to the camera, which is a risk, but I think it works. Um, so
I think
I
it
mean,
works because it's Cusack.
exactly. I was about to say that.
sure, and Zoe Kravitz, but yes, yeah, no, it definitely works.
The voiceovers, it's a cop out.
I don't disagree, but they do it, and it's fine. I don't know. I think the love triangle of this movie, which obviously pulls very heavily from Pride and Prejudice, um, is the juice that makes this work. The three of them have great chemistry in very different ways. And I think that if any of those three leads had been anyone different, I'm not convinced it would have worked. Like, I really do think you need it to be these three people.
Mm.
I think that just for our audience or listeners, Helen Fielding wrote the novel Bridget Jones's Diary based on the character Mark Darcy. His depiction of Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice, which came out in '95.